I sat across the glass counter, my hands numb on the pen they kept nudging toward me. Just a formality, my son said. Just a signature. But I saw the flicker in the teller's eyes, the hesitation, the doubt. Then I heard it, soft but sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "Make her sign before she figures it out," my daughter-in-law whispered. The marble beneath my chair suddenly felt 100 stories deep. I looked up, and for the first time in months, someone looked back like I still mattered. "All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from." The doors to First Republic Trust groaned open with that hushed, air-conditioned weight only high-end institutions seem to master. Money moved quietly here. Maggie Doyle stepped inside, her flats clicking across the marble like they didn't belong. Flanked by Eric and Brittany, she looked like the odd one out in her own life. "Straight ahead, Mom," Eric said, teeth bared in something that tried to be a smile. His hand hovered behind her back, but didn't touch. Not anymore. They moved toward the signature counter near the vault offices. Brittany's heels tapped in double time beside them, her designer bag swinging like a metronome of disdain. The moment they reached the sleek walnut desk, she leaned in close and hissed it through her teeth, just loud enough for the teller to hear, "She's just here to sign, that's all." Allison Brooks, the bank officer behind the desk, froze with the pen still in her hand. Her nameplate caught the light, polished, precise. Her eyes shifted from Brittany to Maggie, then down to the stack of transfer of authority forms laid out like surgical instruments. Maggie didn't reach for the pen. Her hand hovered above the paperwork, trembled once, and pulled back. Her fingers were cold and slightly swollen, the kind of swelling that came from holding too much in for too long. Eric cleared his throat and smiled wider, that practiced politician smile he inherited from no one in her family. "It's just housekeeping, Mom," he said. "No big decisions here. All this does is streamline things in case of emergencies." Maggie didn't look at him. Her eyes flicked over the numbers again. These weren't housekeeping numbers. These were full asset sweeps, investment transfers, medical proxy updates, all consolidated into one tidy pipeline, flowing away from her. Her voice caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. She tasted metal. For a moment, the marble floor felt very far below her. Allison Brooks saw it. All of it. The too eager son. The girlfriend who didn't blink. The trembling mother who wasn't confused, but afraid. The tone in Allison's voice changed. Clipped. Professional. A boundary made of syllables. "Ms. Doyle," she said, "may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Eric started to object, but Maggie raised her hand. Just once. It was small, but it was the first thing that felt like hers in months. She turned to Allison and gave a slight nod. Allison rose and gestured toward the small glass office behind the counter, the one marked "Private Consultations." Maggie followed, her steps unsteady but quiet. Inside, the door clicked shut like a soft verdict. Allison didn't sit. "Do you understand what these documents authorize?" she asked, low but firm. Maggie hesitated. Then, yes and no. Allison tapped the top sheet with a manicured nail. "This isn't just a power of attorney. It grants irrevocable control of your liquid and fixed assets, including transfer rights to beneficiaries not currently on file." Maggie's lips parted. She hadn't heard that part from Eric. She hadn't heard much of anything lately that didn't sound like a plan being made without her. From the other side of the glass, Brittany watched like a hawk. Eric paced once, then pulled out his phone. Inside the office, Maggie's knuckles whitened on the edge of the table. If I sign, she said quietly, can I undo it later? Allison's pause was answer enough. Maggie didn't cry. She didn't sigh. She just stared at her own name, printed cleanly at the bottom of a legal form that felt like a burial. Then she said, barely above a whisper, what happens if I don't sign? Allison met her eyes steady. Then you still own your life. Missy and Doyle. Maggie's hand hovered again, this time not over the pen, but over the page itself. Her fingertips brushed the edge like it might burn. Behind the glass, Brittany leaned into Eric's ear, smiling now. Maggie turned slowly toward the door. And for the first time, she didn't look like the woman who raised her son. She looked like someone learning what it might take to survive him. The private office door opened again, this time by someone new. Mark Varela, Assistant VP of Compliance, stepped in with the practiced ease of someone used to cleaning up financial messes. His ID badge swayed gently against his pressed shirt, and his tone was neutral, but heavy with subtext. Allison? He asked, scanning the tension in the room like radar. I'll take it from here. Maggie didn't flinch, but her breath had slowed to a defensive crawl. Allison nodded and stepped out without a word. Mark offered Maggie a faint smile, genuine but careful. If you're all right, ma'am, let's just move into the consultation room across the hall, he said, gesturing with an open palm. It's quieter there. She followed him, her eyes catching the faint reflection of her own face in the office glass, drawn, tired, but sharper now, like someone waking up mid-fall. Mark opened the door to a larger consultation room, all glass walls and soft lighting. Before she could fully step inside, Eric and Brittany appeared at her shoulder like clockwork. We'll go with her, Eric said quickly, already moving. Mark raised a hand, not firm, not hostile, but immovable. Actually, I need to speak with Ms. Doyle one-on-one for a moment. It's standard protocol when sensitive documents are involved. Brittany didn't even try to hide the scowl that flickered over her face. We're not strangers. We're her family. Mark didn't shift. Exactly why we're required to ensure her comfort in private first. He held the door open just wide enough for Maggie and no one else. She stepped through, slowly, glancing back just once. Eric's jaw tightened. Brittany turned, already texting. Inside, the room felt cooler, quieter. A tall ficus in the corner reached toward the sunlight like it knew how to wait. Mark shut the door gently behind them. Would you like some water? Allison had reappeared briefly with a bottle, her voice soft. She set it on the table between them, then added, take a breath. Nothing moves forward without your full clarity. Maggie sat. Her hands rested in her lap like strangers. Mark took the seat across from her, folding his fingers. Let's walk through this calmly. Do you understand what this transaction entails? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Something in her throat refused to cooperate. Finally, her voice scraped forward. No, she admitted. Not fully. I didn't ask for any of this. Mark waited. The silence didn't feel pressuring. It felt patient. Brittany prepared the papers, Maggie continued. She said it was for convenience, in case anything happened to me. Her lip trembled slightly, but her spine didn't. Mark leaned forward slightly. And you never requested these changes on your own? Maggie shook her head. I didn't even know half those documents existed until today. Mark opened the folder Allison had left on the table. He carefully extracted one form near the back, a power of attorney copy, wrinkled and missing a notary stamp. The date field was blank. He angled it toward her, but she didn't need to read it again. She'd stared at it too long already. Mark clicked the pen in his hand once, then set it down deliberately. This copy isn't legal. It's also incomplete and improperly submitted, but it's enough to raise flags. He picked up the internal phone. Compliance, he said into the receiver. This is Varela. We have a senior account with flagged activity. Requesting senior safe protocol evaluation, potential undue influence. Maggie sat still. The words hung in the air like fog. Undue influence. Outside the glass walls, Brittany paced in tight circles. Her phone was glued to her hand, thumbs flying. Eric had retreated to a nearby bench, face in his hands. Mark hung up. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. They'll open a temporary freeze until we can verify origin, authorization, and clarity of intent, he explained. It protects you, Ms. Doyle. That's our priority. Maggie blinked slowly. Her breath returned, inch by inch. Something in her shoulders unclenched. She reached for the water bottle but didn't open it. Instead, she whispered. Not loud enough for Brittany's hawk eyes to read her lips through the glass, but just enough for Mark to hear. I haven't given away anything. Yet. He nodded, solemn. Then let's make sure you don't. Just then, Maggie's phone buzzed on the table. A message preview flashed. Eric. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Her fingers hovered above the screen, and for the first time, she didn't feel scared. She felt angry. The call came in less than 5 minutes later. Mark pressed a button on the conference speaker and a soft chime echoed through the glass room. The voice on the other end was calm, clipped, and unmistakably authoritative. This is Olivia Warren, Compliance Risk Director. Walk me through it. Mark kept his explanation tight, professional. No editorializing. He listed the incomplete POA, the scope of the documents presented, the rushed pressure in the lobby, and Maggie's statements under review. Olivia asked only one question during the entire rundown. Was any signature obtained? Mark glanced at Maggie. She sat straighter now, not strong yet, but no longer folded in half. No, ma'am, he said. Nothing's been executed. There was a pause, followed by the decisive clatter of a keyboard on Olivia's end. Initiating a disbursement hold. All outgoing transfers and beneficiary changes are suspended for 72 hours pending forensic review, effective immediately. Maggie exhaled, but it came out shaky, like she hadn't realized she'd been holding it. Outside the glass, Eric's head shot up as if he'd felt the shift in gravity. Brittany's fingers stopped moving over her phone for the first time since they'd walked in. Mark muted the speaker. That gives us time, he said softly. Allison stepped back into the room with something folded under her arm. She didn't speak right away, just set a cream-colored form in front of Maggie and laid a pen beside it. The header read, Trusted Contact Authorization. Maggie looked at it, then up at Allison. You're allowed to name someone, Allison said gently. Someone who'll be contacted if there's ever suspicion of coercion or financial abuse. It's not control. It's just a safeguard. For a moment, Maggie's hand hovered over the form, uncertain. Then, quietly, she picked up the pen. She didn't hesitate on the name. Grace Turner. Her granddaughter. 26. Still in law school? Still kind. The pen moved fluidly across the page, her handwriting tight but legible. For the first time since she'd arrived at the bank, Maggie was writing something on her own terms. Before she could finish, a loud crack shattered the quiet. Eric slammed his open palm against the glass. His face twisted, a mix of disbelief and rage, like the plan was melting in front of him and he couldn't understand how. Maggie startled, just a blink, but her hand didn't stop moving. Mark stood without a word and made a subtle motion toward the front desk. Two uniformed bank security staff appeared within moments, strolling in with deliberate slowness, like this wasn't the first family eruption they'd managed. Eric backed off, jaw tight, arms raised in exasperation. Brittany hissed something at him, but the sound didn't carry through the glass. Inside the room, Maggie slid the finished form back toward Allison and placed the pen down. Steady now. I came so close, she whispered, not to anyone in particular. Her hand touched her chest briefly. Her pulse was faster than she wanted it to be. Allison reached out, not touching her, just offering her presence like a beam across a bridge. But you didn't, she said quietly. That's what matters. The speaker chimed again. Olivia, back. Allison, I'll need scanned copies of every document the client was presented with today. Originals flagged and sealed for chain of custody review. Allison nodded once. Understood. Mark unmuted the line. Would you like a statement from Ms. Doyle at this point? Another brief pause. Only if she's ready. Maggie didn't answer right away. She looked down at the trusted contact form again, then up at the glass where her son still stood, arms crossed, eyes burning. The boy she had once taken to t-ball practice now looked at her like an obstacle. She turned back to Olivia's disembodied voice. I'm not ready to give a statement, Maggie said slowly. Mark and Allison waited, motionless. But I'm ready to tell the truth. The glass door creaked open again, this time without a knock. Brittany strode in like she owned the oxygen in the room, heels rapping against the tile as if she intended to leave dents. In her manicured hand, she waved a folded document like a courtroom exhibit. This, she said brightly, should clear everything up. Mark stood, shoulders tight but civil. You weren't invited in. I don't need to be, she said, eyes locking onto Maggie. I'm here on medical grounds. She unfolded the page with a dramatic flick and placed it squarely in front of Mark. Maggie didn't move, but her pulse stuttered. The paper was letterhead, faint blue, with a caduceus printed at the top. Cumberland Medical and Neurology Group. R.E. Margaret Doyle. Cognitive Evaluation Results. Mark scanned it quickly, his trained eyes already narrowing. This is recent, Brittany chirped. She's been forgetful. You've seen it, haven't you? Trouble tracking things, getting overwhelmed. This confirms mild cognitive impairment. Nothing shameful, just medical fact. Maggie opened her mouth, but no words came. Mark studied the bottom of the page. This letter is dated August 3rd, he said flatly. And yet it claims Maggie was evaluated last Thursday. He turned the page slightly toward Allison, who'd appeared silently beside him, eyes sharp as glass. She leaned in. Clinic's address is listed on Maple Street, Allison murmured, already pulling her phone. They moved last winter. They're on Brighton now. Mark nodded once, the gears clicking together. Brittany's confident smile cracked half a millimeter. So they forgot to update a form. People forget things. Allison's eyes didn't leave the page. And the physician's name is misspelled. What? Brittany said too quickly. It's Dr. Caitlin McKelvey, Allison said calmly. You've got McKelvey. No second E. She's my aunt's neurologist. Mark pressed the conference line button again. The speaker came alive with a soft chime. Olivia, he said, we've been handed a medical document claiming cognitive impairment. Initial review reveals a mismatched date, wrong clinic address, and a misspelled physician's name. Silence crackled, then Olivia's voice sliced through it. Upload it now. Chain it with the other documents. We're adding potential forgery to the review. Brittany took a step back, blinking as though someone had slapped her in slow motion. Eric pushed into the room behind her, face flushed. Mom. he said, raising his voice just enough to try and sound tender. This is all a misunderstanding. Just sign the documents and we'll fix it later. We'll go over everything together, okay? You trust me. Maggie stared at him. The boy who used to count change on the kitchen table, the teenager who once made her a birthday card with glitter glue and swore he'd take care of her forever. Now he was sweating through a Brooks Brothers shirt and pushing forged documents. Later, she said slowly, is how you lose everything. Eric blinked, like the air had just been knocked from his chest. Brittany recovered first. You don't even know what you're saying. She's clearly not signing anything, Mark interrupted, voice like a locked gate. Maggie didn't rise. She didn't flinch. But something inside her settled into place, like a house returning to its foundation after a tremor. I want every copy of that letter turned over, she said, voice measured. And I want someone to call Grace. Olivia's voice returned, colder than before. Already in motion. Maggie, we'll need you to confirm the forgery wasn't arranged with your knowledge. I didn't arrange anything, she said. Her eyes flicked toward Brittany. But I was being managed. No one replied. Eric turned, muttering something under his breath as he paced back into the lobby. Brittany stood still, frozen in the doorway, cornered not by guards, but by facts. Then Maggie added softly but unmistakably, "Get out." Brittany hesitated, just a breath, then walked backward, eyes flashing, pride dragging behind her like a ripped train. As the door clicked shut, Maggie looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. The speaker chirped again. "Stand by," Olivia said, her voice flatter now, distracted by whatever she was reading. "We're pulling archived pods linked to the original account setup. They were flagged under cold storage retention protocols. Should be... Here we go." Everyone in the consultation room went still. Mark sat forward. Allison paused mid-scan. Maggie just watched the speaker like it had teeth. Olivia's voice returned, slow, deliberate. "There's a document dated May 12, 2017, primary beneficiary designation. Listed name, Grace Elizabeth Turner. Relation, granddaughter. Secondary and contingent fields are blank." Maggie blinked. She hadn't thought about that day in years. "There's also a sealed client note associated with the file," Olivia continued. "Scanned into archive under wet ink record retention. Handwritten. Signed. Would you like me to read it?" Mark glanced at Maggie, who gave the smallest nod. Olivia cleared her throat. "If I ever appear confused, overwhelmed, or pressured to change beneficiary designations, initiate a full hold protocol immediately. Contact Grace Turner, Margaret Doyle." The room went so quiet even the overhead lights seemed to dim. Allison looked up slowly, her eyes locking with Maggie's. The quiet between them didn't need language. "You protected yourself," Allison said softly. "Years ago." Maggie's hand moved toward her chest again, not in fear this time, but recognition, like touching the zipper of a coat she forgot she packed. Olivia came back on. "Mark, I'm forwarding the PDF scan to your secure terminal. Pull it up." He turned his monitor. There it was. Maggie's neat handwriting, her looping G, the careful underline beneath full hold protocol. Outside the glass, Eric and Brittany had frozen. Their movement stopped so suddenly it looked choreographed. Eric's mouth opened slightly, like he'd swallowed the wind. Brittany didn't blink. Her grip tightened on her phone, but her screen was dark. Mark cleared his throat and read aloud for the record. The client previously designated her granddaughter as sole beneficiary and explicitly requested internal escalation if pressured. This was documented and sealed 8 years ago, under her own hand. Silence. Then Olivia's voice sliced through it. Add this to the archive chain, lock the client profile, and flag the letter Brittany Hill submitted earlier. Mark raised an eyebrow. Fraud? Probable. Pushing an altered medical letter while attempting asset redirection from a documented beneficiary is a financial crimes escalation under the Elder Safety Act, Olivia replied. Allison's fingers moved fast over the terminal. I'm preparing the chain of custody envelope for the forged letter now. At the center of it all, Maggie sat still, but no longer small. Her hands lay flat on the table. Her knuckles were no longer white. I remember writing that note, she said quietly. Grace had just helped me set up online banking. I felt clear that day. Sharp. Like myself. I didn't want to forget who I trusted. You didn't forget, Allison said. You just got surrounded by people who hoped you had. Outside the room, Eric took a step forward, but Mark was already standing. The security officers flanked the glass. No one was getting back inside. Brittany's eyes were on the ground now, shoulders tight. Maggie turned toward the printer on the corner table as it came alive with a soft mechanical whir. A single-page document slid out and landed in the tray. Allison walked it over and set it down in front of her. At the top, in bold black letters, Compliance Hold Notice, initiated by Client Protection Division below that. In smaller font, all transactions, changes in designation, and disbursements are suspended for a minimum of 72 hours pending forensic and legal review. Maggie picked it up, smoothed the corners with her fingers, and slid it into her purse. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't looking to Eric for permission. She wasn't asking anyone what came next. I'd like a copy sent to Grace directly, she said calmly. Email and paper mail. It's done, Olivia confirmed. Mark stood, buttoning his jacket. You just shut down an attempted financial hijack, Ms. Doyle. Maggie met his eyes. No, she said. I just remembered who I used to be. The room was still, a different kind of still. Not the tense waiting that filled the earlier hours. This was the quiet that comes after something breaks and can't be put back the same. Olivia's voice returned to the speaker, this time with a clipped efficiency that left no room for questions. We've pulled lobby security footage, she said. There's audio attached. I want you to hear something. Mark reached across the table and turned the volume knob just enough to make the space feel smaller. The room filled with a soft, static hum. Then, just tell her it's for emergencies, a voice whispered. Maggie's spine stiffened. She knew that voice. Use the word housekeeping. Keep your tone calm. She hates being embarrassed. It was Brittany. Clear as crystal. Measured. Practiced. If she hesitates, remind her she said once she didn't want to be a burden. We play that card, okay? There was a pause in the recording. Then Eric's voice, lower and unsure. What if she asks about Grace? Don't say her name. You say it's temporary. That's it. This whole thing is temporary. Maggie's throat closed like a fist. It wasn't just the words. It was the rehearsed cruelty, the intention. Across from her, Allison's face had gone pale. Mark didn't say anything. He simply clicked a key on the monitor, and the recording ended with a low pop. In the silence that followed, the printer behind them came to life. Its mechanical rhythm filled the space like a metronome at a funeral. Mark pulled the freshly printed page from the tray and clipped it to the growing case file. Verbatim transcript, he said, placing it gently in front of Maggie. We're attaching it to the report and sending a flagged notice to the financial crimes liaison assigned to Olivia's desk. Maggie stared at the paper, but didn't touch it. Her fingers curled inward, gently, as if trying to hide from the sound that still echoed in her bones. She hadn't realized how much worse betrayal felt when you could hear it. Not just read it, not just suspect it, but hear it. Stereo, digital, real. Allison stepped forward, her voice soft. "Would you like us to call your trusted contact?" Maggie didn't hesitate this time. She nodded once. The motion was steady. Final. Allison lifted the receiver and dialed. She didn't need to ask the number. It had already been entered, flagged, and authorized. The first ring hadn't finished before the answer clicked in. Grace Turner. Maggie leaned forward slightly. Grace. It's Grandma. There was no pause, no confusion, no awkward distance. "I'm on my way," Grace said immediately. "Don't sign a thing, not one damn thing." Maggie felt a laugh almost rise, but it caught halfway up her chest and turned into something warmer, stronger. "Bring your student ID and a jacket," she said, voice shaky but joking now, if only slightly. "I'm not coming as a student," Grace replied. "I'm coming as your next of kin." The line disconnected, but the air in the room had changed again. Maggie's breathing came deeper. Fuller. Outside the glass, Brittany paced in tight little arcs. Her posture wasn't composed anymore. Her chin jutted forward, her jaw clenched. She looked like someone in a sinking boat, still arguing with the tide. Eric stood farther off now, leaning against a pillar, his phone loose in his hand, forgotten. Mark slid the case folder into a secure courier envelope and sealed it with a thick adhesive strip. "This is being delivered to financial crimes within the hour." "Can they really do anything?" Maggie asked quietly. "They can do a lot," Mark said. "And with what we have now, they probably will." Maggie didn't speak right away. She simply reached for the water bottle on the table, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip. Her hands didn't shake. For the first time all day, her hands didn't shake. Eric stepped outside into the stifling heat of late afternoon, the bank's polished glass doors hissing shut behind him. The sunlight caught the sweat already forming on his brow, but he didn't notice. His fingers were flying across the screen of his phone. He wasn't calling Maggie. He wasn't calling Grace. He was calling Northbridge Financial. The voice that answered was automated at first, then routed to a junior associate. Eric's tone shifted instantly. Calm, confident, just a son handling logistics for his mother. No need to worry. "Hi, yes. I'd like to initiate a wire transfer from Margaret Doyle's trust account ending in 6619, he said smoothly. "I know the routing and account numbers from memory. Can I verify over the phone?" From inside the consultation room, Olivia's eyes flicked to her screen. The ping wasn't subtle. It was a bright red flag marked Cross-Bank Beneficiary Alert. External wire attempt. Watch listed profile. She tapped a few keys, brought up the expanded metadata, and read the originating number aloud without needing to ask permission. Mark looked up. "That's him," he said. "Eric Doyle, the son." Olivia's voice was dry. "He's trying to jump banks. Sloppy." She opened a compliance tool labeled CISA Safe, Client Integrity and Security Advisory, Shared Access Fraud Exchange, and entered the details. Within 30 seconds, she had linked First Republic's case file to Northbridge's risk department and issued a real-time flag. Cross-institutional coordination, fully permitted, fully in motion. Back in the lobby, Brittany was unraveling. She marched to the front desk, face flushed, heels pounding like hammers. "I need someone in management right now," she snapped. "We'll be moving my mother-in-law's funds today. This is ridiculous." The receptionist, unshaken, buzzed Allison. Mark stepped out of the glass room before the call finished routing. "Ms. Hill," he said evenly, "you're not on the account. You're not listed as a signer. You're not authorized to move a dime." Brittany folded her arms. "We'll take our business elsewhere." "You don't have business here," he said, not unkindly, just truth. That's when Eric reappeared through the front doors, moving too fast. He looked at Brittany, then over at Mark. "They blocked it," he muttered. "They blocked everything." Allison emerged from the side hallway with a clipboard in her hands, no rush in her step. Northbridge flagged the attempt. "They've acknowledged cross-institutional coordination under safe protocols. You're done for today." Brittany's face twisted. "You're not even real law enforcement." "We don't have to be," Allison replied. "We're banks. You tried to reroute funds that aren't yours with a forged capacity letter. There's no misunderstanding left." Security moved. Calm, measured steps. They weren't closing in, just getting closer. Eric's shoulders rose. Brittany glanced behind her. The bank had turned into something they couldn't yell their way through anymore. Inside the glass room, Maggie stood near the far wall, watching it all play out like a theater she had once starred in and now simply observed. She held her phone low in her palm and typed out a single message. To Rachel Cooper. "It's time." She didn't hit send right away. She looked at her son through the glass, no longer pacing, no longer pushing, just still. Caught. Then she tapped the message. The little blue bar slid across the top of her screen. Sent. Rachel would understand. They'd talked once, a year ago, when Maggie saw a news special on elder law abuse and jotted Rachel's name on a post-it in her kitchen drawer. Just in case. Now wasn't just in case. Now was war. Outside the building, a town car was just pulling away from the curb. The door inside the bank eased shut behind Eric and Brittany, though neither turned to leave. But inside the sealed room, Maggie exhaled, slid her phone back into her purse, and finally sat down like someone who had decided she was done giving up anything, especially herself. Inside the glass-walled room, the hum of high-level movement had taken over. Olivia was already multitasking, her voice clipped and surgical as she spoke into the phone while typing on a secondary screen. "Maricopa County Liaison Office Parcel Monitoring Division. Yes, this is Olivia Warren, First Republic Trust. Compliance risk." She didn't wait for pleasantries. "I'm placing a dual flag monitoring alert on parcel file 021-447-008. Name on title, Margaret Doyle. I need immediate notifications routed to both the client and myself if any changes, refinance, transfer, quitclaim, or sale, are initiated within the next 30 days. Priority override." Her fingers flew across the keyboard as the agent on the other end confirmed the protocol. Mark watched quietly from across the table, arms folded. Allison reviewed the growing folder of documents that now told a very different story than the one Eric and Brittany had tried to script. Olivia ended the call and looked up. "Your house is now under dual notice protection," she told Maggie. "If someone tries anything, even a quiet title filing, you'll get a ping." Maggie blinked. "They would have tried that next, wouldn't they?" "They usually do," Olivia said. "You got ahead of it." A knock at the lobby door interrupted them. Grace. She entered like a gust of oxygen, legal pad tucked under her arm, hair half pulled back, cheeks flushed from the sprint from the curb. The security guard let her through without a word. "Grandma," she said, already moving. Maggie stood just in time to catch the hug. It wasn't fragile. It was solid. Earnest. Grounding. "I'm here," Grace said into her shoulder. "I'm not leaving." Maggie didn't answer at first. She just closed her eyes and nodded once. Brittany was still in the lobby, arms folded, watching the reunion like it offended her. "They think you're broke without us," she called out with a sneer. "That's why they're putting on this show." Grace turned slowly but didn't let go of her grandmother. "No," she said evenly. "They think she's smart enough to have protected herself. And they're right. That's why you're losing." The words hung in the air like smoke. Allison, composed as ever, walked back into the room and set a fresh folder in front of Maggie. On the cover, in plain, bold print, "Consumer Financial Rights, Elder Protection Act, plus Banking Safety Handbook. This is everything you need to know about what's been triggered on your behalf," Allison said. "Your rights, the investigation timeline, resources, numbers, legal advisories. We've also included a contact sheet for the financial crimes unit you'll be speaking with." Grace reached out and flipped it open, skimming. "This is good," she said. "This is really good." Olivia stood from her workstation. "Ms. Doyle, I've scheduled a formal compliance interview for you tomorrow morning. You'll give your full recorded statement. That becomes part of the case file we're building for federal review." Grace nodded, already taking notes in the margins of a blank page. Maggie's fingers trailed across the edge of the handbook. The paper wasn't just paper anymore. It was armor. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Olivia confirmed. "We've already blocked the trust, frozen outbound access, and established your beneficiary trail, but your voice on the record cements it." Mark added, "You'll go on file as the complainant and primary owner, not the subject of investigation, the initiator." Maggie looked toward the lobby one last time. Eric sat in a chair now, staring down at the floor. Brittany paced again, tight, quick loops like an animal that couldn't find the door it came in from. Maggie turned back to the table. "Do I need to bring anything tomorrow?" Grace smiled. "Just your voice." The moment the room quieted, Grace pulled out her phone, scrolled for a second, then turned the screen toward Olivia. "I need you to see this," she said, voice flat. Olivia leaned in. It was a link to a public estate sale site, one of the upscale platforms used for private downsizing sales, the kind with glossy photos, headline typography, and curated descriptions designed to frame loss as luxury. "Doyle Family Home. Select pieces for sale. Contact Brittany Hill, estate organizer." Allison stepped closer. "Date posted?" Grace scrolled. "Yesterday, before they even brought her to the bank." Mark let out a breath through his nose. They were counting on her saying yes. Olivia clicked the link, capturing the listing's URL and metadata. "I've got it. It's now evidence. We'll archive screenshots and send a digital takedown request by the hour." Maggie hadn't looked at the screen yet. She didn't need to. "I didn't authorize anything," she said quietly. "Nothing in that house is for sale." Grace finally tilted the phone toward her. Maggie looked. A photo filled the screen. Her hallway hutch. Walnut wood. A family Bible on top. Her mother's crystal in the lower glass. A handwritten tag read, "Perfect for collectors. Price negotiable." She blinked once, then leaned back. "They staged the house like I was already gone." Mark was already moving. He opened a blank affidavit template, entered Maggie's name, date, and the property parcel number. "This will be a sworn declaration. You're affirming you gave no permission to list or move property." Maggie nodded, barely. Grace set the phone down beside the handbook Allison had given them earlier. "They thought they'd sell off everything piece by piece," she said. She used her own contact information, email, number. They weren't subtle. Allison reached across the table, flipping to a printed checklist near the back of the handbook. "You should inventory every room, Take photos, mark anything high value or irreplaceable, and lock what you can. If you have a safe, use it. If not, we can help recommend temporary storage options. Maggie didn't look rattled now. She looked done. Not with the fight, but with being caught off guard. No more surprises, she said. The words came out crisp. Grace looked over. I'll help. I'll photograph every room tonight. Mark handed over the affidavit. You'll sign this at the end of the meeting. We'll notarize and upload immediately. This will also go to financial crimes and the local civil fraud coordinator. Maggie nodded again, her breath steady. Her hand closed around the pen without trembling. It felt heavier than it should have, or maybe more permanent. She signed her name at the bottom, clear, full, unshaken. I didn't forget what mattered, she said almost to herself. I just forgot they didn't care. No one answered. They didn't need to. Olivia stood from her chair, closing her laptop with a soft click. We'll brief financial crimes first thing in the morning, with the listing, the attempted wire transfer, the forged capacity letter, and the prior beneficiary override on file. We have the beginning of a prosecutable pattern. Will they press charges? Grace asked. Depends, Olivia said, but we'll hand them everything they need if they choose to. Out in the lobby, Brittany was on her phone again, her voice rising, tone clipped. She didn't look like someone in control anymore. She looked like someone trying to outrun a paper trail. Eric had moved farther from her now, standing near the ATM kiosk like he needed to seem uninvolved. The air outside the consultation room had shifted. They weren't running the show anymore. Inside, Maggie looked at Grace. I want the house locked up before dark. Grace smiled faintly. Already planning on it. The folder Rachel Cooper dropped on the consultation table wasn't thick, but the weight it carried was enough to split the air. She pulled out the stapled packet Brittany had sent ahead. One final grasp for control dressed up like legal authority. The title page was dressed in Times New Roman bold, Agreement to Vacate Premises, Conditional Family Support Reimbursement Contact, Brittany Hill, Executor in Fact. Rachel's brows lifted slightly, the faintest trace of amusement in her expression. Executor in fact, she repeated, almost to herself. That's not even a real term. Grace leaned in. What is this? It's a trap, Rachel said, flipping to page 2. They're trying to create the appearance of past financial support and attach repayment obligations to it. They're even referencing grocery receipts and mileage reimbursements going back 2 years. Maggie's face stayed neutral, but her hands folded tightly on her lap. Mark stepped forward, reading over Rachel's shoulder. There's a penalty clause? Rachel pointed. Here. Failure to sign may result in immediate removal from the premises, coordinated by private relocation services. That's not just unlawful. That's borderline coercion. Allison's eyes narrowed. Did they send this before or after the estate listing? Just after, Grace said. She emailed it to the general inbox and flagged it urgent. Probably thought it would reach Maggie before we found it. Rachel smiled, thin and sharp. Well, it reached me first. She slid the packet aside and opened a separate folder. Official, thick, and properly tabbed. This, she said, laying the open page flat, is the revocable living trust you set up in 2016. You funded it with the house. Recorded deed attached. It's real, active, and completely intact. Maggie leaned forward, squinting at her own signature. I remember doing this, she said softly. It was right after my friend Lorraine had her kids sell her condo without asking. Rachel tapped the corner of the page. You also named a successor trustee, Grace Turner. Grace blinked. Wait, me? You were 19, Maggie said. Smart, responsible. You were the only one who didn't treat me like I was already fading. Rachel continued. As successor trustee, Grace has the legal authority to act on behalf of the trust if you become unable, or if you direct her to step in. That includes managing assets, protecting the home, and pursuing fraud. Mark gave a low whistle. So they never had a shot. Olivia pulled up the bank's portal. And the trust itself was never amended. No additional beneficiaries. No joint management. Eric and Brittany have no legal tie to it. Allison nodded. Then everything they've done, wire attempts, sale listings, even this contract, is not just manipulative, it's irrelevant. Rachel turned back to the fraudulent contract. We'll still include this in the file. Intent matters. Maggie reached for the trust documents again, more firmly this time. So this protects the house? It protects everything titled to the trust, Rachel said. Your home, your accounts under the trust's name, and your right to direct who comes near either. Grace looked over. So they can't come after her again? Rachel shrugged. They can try, but legally, they're already out in the cold. Maggie exhaled through her nose. Her eyes flicked toward the glass wall. Brittany was pacing again, not confident anymore, just tight, short steps. Her phone was in her hand, but the screen stayed dark. Eric sat slouched in a corner chair, head lowered like the weight had finally found him. Mark tapped the desk once, then spoke. Once you sign acknowledgement of this trust, we'll upload it to the case file, flag the contract as fraudulent, and log your protection status with the county liaison. Rachel passed Maggie a pen. You don't need to prove anything, she said gently. Just sign your name and take your place back. Maggie didn't hesitate. She signed with the same hand that had shaken at the signature counter hours ago, but there was no tremor now. Just ink, steady and sure. When she looked up, her voice was clear. We'll not be doing this, she said. Not to anyone in particular, and yet, to everyone. Cliffhanger, not included in word count. Rachel's phone buzzed. One new email. Subject, anonymous tip, forged POA history, Doyle family. She scanned the first lines, jaw tightening. Maggie, she said. Someone came forward. They're ready to testify. Says this isn't the first time your son's done this. Maggie didn't blink. Then we're not stopping at defense, she said. We're going for the record. The small compliance room at First Republic had been prepped before dawn. A fresh legal pad, dual witness chairs, a carafe of water, and 2 digital recorders waited on the table like courtroom props. The blinds had been drawn, but sunlight still bled through the seams, striping the room in quiet tension. Maggie sat at the center. Her hands rested on the edge of the table, palms down, tight but grounded. Beside her sat Grace, a steady presence. Allison and Mark took seats to witness as required. Across from them was Nora Hale, the liaison investigator assigned from financial crimes. She wasn't intimidating on the surface. Button-down blouse, tortoise-shell glasses, a calm, clipped tone. But every word she spoke landed like it was already part of the permanent record. Nora clicked on the recorder and opened her notebook. We'll begin on the record. Date, time, participants logged. This is the formal financial exploitation interview of Margaret Doyle, initiated under the Elder Safety and Recovery Act, Article 2, Subsection B. Maggie nodded, lips pressed into a neutral line. Nora glanced at her. Start from the beginning, not your whole life, just the pressure. When did it start feeling off? Maggie exhaled, then began. At first, it was subtle, she said. My son Eric and his fiancée, Brittany, started offering to help with errands, grocery runs, prescription pickups, little things. Her voice held. Then Brittany suggested I consolidate my accounts, said it would make emergencies easier. She brought the forms. I never asked for them, but they made it sound like a routine thing, a just in case. Nora was writing in clean, quick strokes. Did they mention anything about altering your power of attorney or revoking your trustee assignment? No, Maggie said. Not once. She pulled a folded page from her handbag and laid it flat. The forged medical letter Brittany had submitted. Maggie didn't touch it. She just stared at it like it belonged to someone else's life. They gave this to the bank, she said. Claimed I had cognitive decline. It's not even spelled right. But it almost worked. Olivia entered the room silently, wheeling her laptop and a secure tablet cart. She gave Nora a brief nod, then connected to the screen at the front of the room. I'm screen sharing the wire transfer attempts, Olivia said. Cross-bank data from Northbridge confirms Eric Doyle tried to initiate an external wire using verbal memory verification, flagged as unauthorized. Timing matches the estate sale listing Brittany created. The screen filled with timestamps, contact logs, security triggers. Nora leaned forward slightly. These are tight, she said. Verified? All from bank compliance logs and CISA safe coordination, Olivia replied. Full chain of custody metadata available. Nora gave a small nod, turning to Grace. Anything to add? Grace took out her phone, pulled up a recent estate sale listing, and turned the screen toward Nora. They listed my grandmother's piano, she said. It's been in our family since 1958. Brittany priced it at $150 and wrote, "Must go today. Seller relocating client." She handed Nora the phone. I screenshotted everything. You'll find her contact number and email on the ad. Maggie's breath caught. Her hand started to tremble. She curled her fingers inward, held them tight, then slowly relaxed them again, pressing her palms to the table until they stilled. Nora saw it. She didn't comment. Instead, she uncapped her pen and looked Maggie directly in the eyes. You did everything right by coming here. The room held its breath for a moment. Maggie's eyes shone, but she blinked it back. I didn't come here to be brave, she said quietly. I came because I ran out of time to pretend. Olivia locked the screen. That's often the moment when everything turns. The next morning, Maggie arrived at the branch in clean linen and low heels. No longer the woman who had hovered at the signature counter with trembling hands. She walked in on her own. Rachel Cooper was already waiting in the private consultation room, papers laid out in a tidy row. She looked up as Maggie entered and nodded once, crisp and clear. No contact letters, Rachel said. Civil, enforceable. The fastest path to a boundary they can't pretend not to see. She slid two identical documents across the table, one addressed to Eric Doyle, the other to Brittany Hill. The headers were unambiguous. Notice of cease and desist, personal and financial contact, issued by counsel on behalf of Margaret Doyle, trustee and grantor. No phone calls, no uninvited visits, no attempts to mediate through third parties. Any violation becomes grounds for harassment charges. Maggie picked up the pen. She didn't hesitate this time. 2 clean signatures, left margin, right margin. Final page. Rachel notarized both. Copies go to them via certified mail today. Originals stay with me. You are now legally protected from further family favors. Outside the consultation room, Olivia was on the compliance floor, already coordinating. I want full-spectrum fraud alerts placed across all Doyle-linked holdings, she told the bank's digital security liaison. All third-party access removed. All flags tied to CISA safe profile. Permanent note on record. No account changes without in-person verification and Maggie's passphrase. She hung up, then turned to Mark. Upgrade the verification tier. Mark nodded. Biometric if possible. In-person only. No exceptions. She comes in. We verify her face, her passphrase, her signature, her pulse if we have to. Mark jotted a note. What phrase did she choose? Olivia pulled it from a sealed envelope and read aloud. It ends with me. Back at the house, Grace worked quietly. The lock change had taken 2 hours. Every door now had smart deadbolts and keyed backups. She moved from room to room with her checklist, labeling high-value items, backing up the digital photo inventory to a secure cloud folder Rachel had recommended. Maggie moved through the space like someone relearning a language she once spoke fluently, her home, her territory. Feels different, she said, running a hand along the back of her favorite reading chair. Grace glanced up. It is. It's yours again. Allison stopped by later in the afternoon, not with a file folder or affidavit, but with a plain manila envelope. Inside, Maggie found a single brochure. The cover read, Senior Safe, You Are Not Alone. Inside, circled in blue pen, was a quote underlined twice. The moment you say no is not when you become difficult. It's when you begin to recover. Maggie traced the line with her finger. That night, for the first time in weeks, she left her phone on the nightstand without checking it 10 times. She turned the lamp off before midnight. The house didn't creak the way it used to. Or maybe it did. But it no longer sounded like a threat. She slept. Through the night. Without waking. Across town, the sun was just slipping behind a row of red-tiled roofs. Inside Brittany's condo, the glow of her laptop lit her face in cold blue. She typed with quick, angry strokes, fingers pounding the keys harder than needed. The social media post was already drafted. A picture of Maggie smiling from last Thanksgiving. A caption dripping with curated heartbreak. Some of you know what we've been through. We tried to protect my fiancé's mother. But when lawyers and lies get involved, love doesn't stand a chance. Please keep us in your prayers. We're still grieving a family we fought to save. She paused, eyes narrowed. Then she added 3 hashtags. Elder abuse, is real, broken trust, our family first. She hovered her finger over post and clicked. The folding chairs at Maricopa Community Hall were already half full by the time Maggie and Grace arrived. Flyers had gone out under a modest title, Senior Financial Safety Night. But the energy in the room said otherwise. Neighbors murmured. Pages rustled. A podium mic gave off the occasional soft whine. It was the kind of gathering where everyone knew each other, or at least recognized one another from grocery aisles and morning walks. Maggie wore navy, not the black of mourning, not the beige of fear. Navy was neutral, solid, the color of showing up. Grace held her arm but didn't guide her. She didn't need to anymore. Near the front of the hall, Olivia stood with Nora Hale, quietly reviewing their talking points. Olivia's suit jacket was crisp, and Nora's glasses caught the fluorescence as she scanned the room like a radar. At exactly 6:03, Olivia approached the mic. "Good evening," she said, her voice carrying easily. "I'm Olivia Warren with First Republic's Compliance Risk Division. This evening's topic is financial safety for seniors. But more than that, it's about recognizing the patterns, the warning signs, and most importantly, the power of prevention." She introduced Nora, who stepped forward and delivered a few sobering statistics. The average victim, she said, didn't realize what was happening until over $120,000 had changed hands, often quietly, often within the family. Gasps, low murmurs, Nora continued. We're in the middle of an active investigation. Details withheld, of course. But the courage of one woman in this community helped stop a pattern that could have cost her everything. She didn't name Maggie. She didn't have to. All eyes drifted to the third row where Maggie sat. Allison spoke next. She wasn't in her usual buttoned-down bank blouse. She wore a deep forest green cardigan, sleeves rolled, voice warm. We're trained to watch for behavior changes, hesitation, eyes darting toward a family member before signing. Inconsistent language. A client who once wrote checks with confidence suddenly asking what their name looks like in cursive again. The audience was quiet now, listening the way people listen when something applies to more than just the speaker. We don't always get to intervene, Allison said, but when we do, when we can, it's because someone walks in and says something doesn't feel right. Applause rippled softly. Rachel Cooper took the mic next, introducing herself as a civil attorney specializing in elder protections. She held up a copy of a generic revocable living trust. This isn't just a legal document, she said. It's a seatbelt. You hope you never need it, but when someone tries to grab the wheel, this keeps your name on the title. Laughter broke out. Brief, warm. Dozens of pens scratched across lined notepads. Then Olivia returned to the mic. I want to invite someone up here tonight, she said. Only if she's willing. Someone who turned fear into motion. Maggie didn't need prompting. She stood, walked to the front of the hall. Grace didn't follow. She stayed in her seat, watching, glowing. Maggie took the microphone. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. My name is Margaret Doyle, she said, and I thought being quiet would protect me. A few people nodded. A man in the back whispered, Mags, to the woman beside him. She continued, I won't go into details. Just this. It started with little things, suggestions, signatures, words like, just in case. But I learned that silence gives people room to rewrite your life without your permission. She looked around the room. Her neighbors. Her grocery store cashier. A man who once helped her carry mulch from the trunk of her car. I'm still here, still in my home, because I stopped being polite, and I started asking questions. Silence, then applause. Slow, then swelling. As Maggie returned to her seat, Nora stood to close the evening. This is what prevention looks like, she said. This is what courage sounds like. Just as she reached for the mic switch, the back door creaked open. Eric. He stepped inside in jeans and a collared shirt, face paler than Maggie remembered. His eyes darted around the room, expecting a crowd he could still sway. Instead, he saw Maggie at the front, applauded, heard, known. Rachel turned. Olivia stood. Eric's mouth opened. No sound came. Cliffhanger, not included in word count. In the shadows behind him, a figure with a press badge raised a phone, camera lens trained straight at his face. The caption was already typed. Bank fraud suspect attends elder safety seminar. Too late? The search began at 9:17 a.m., precise and without ceremony. Nora Hale's team arrived at the condo with printed warrants, body cams blinking red, and no room for debate. The officers didn't knock twice. Brittany opened the door in leggings and a face mask, clearly not expecting the day to begin with legal intrusion. Search warrant, the lead officer announced. We are executing a lawful investigation under Arizona Revised Statute 13-1802, Section C. Eric appeared a moment later, barefoot and disoriented, wearing a faded Arizona State sweatshirt. He blinked at the badges, the gloves, the slow, methodical entry of law enforcement into his living room. This is a mistake, Brittany snapped, already reaching for her phone. "We're victims of slander. I'm calling our attorney." "You're welcome to do that," Nora said calmly as she stepped through the door. "But in the meantime, we'll be collecting evidence." Two officers moved to the home office, converted from a second bedroom. They began tagging folders, pulling hard drives, photographing whiteboards, opening drawers. One of them paused at a neatly labeled accordion file tucked beneath a stack of magazines. Inside were drafts of the forged capacity letter, several iterations in different fonts, some with highlighted notes like backdate and make diagnosis sound softer. Another drawer revealed unused templates of power of attorney documents, complete with watermark overlays and fields for signatures that had never been made. One draft even had a sticky note still attached. "Get her to sign after lunch. Easier then." Screenshots pulled from Brittany's laptop showed active estate sale listings with photos of Maggie's belongings, some already marked as pending pickup. Nora stood at the center of it all, arms folded, eyes scanning the room like she was taking a mental inventory of every false word ever spoken. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Eric sat on the edge of the couch, hollow-eyed, staring at nothing. His phone lay face down on the coffee table. He hadn't picked it up since they arrived. Brittany, on the other hand, was a thunderstorm. "You think this means anything?" she barked, following Nora from room to room. "You people don't get it. Families fight. This is normal. This is private." Nora turned to her, face unreadable. "Private ends where felony begins." At First Republic, Olivia received the confirmation just after noon. A soft ding on her encrypted terminal signaled the case elevation. The internal compliance investigation had officially merged with the active criminal probe. Law enforcement now had jurisdictional alignment. The pieces had become a pattern: intent, method, execution. She flagged the file, locked it into the internal archive, and pinged Mark. He arrived 5 minutes later with a single-page printout. "Final disposition from internal review," he said, placing it in front of Maggie. The top line read, "Compliance hold, upheld. Beneficiary changes, nullified. Fraud attempts, referred to investigations." Below that, a final note. "Primary beneficiary, Grace Elizabeth Turner, unchanged." Maggie read it twice, then once more. She didn't cry, didn't collapse. She simply closed her eyes for a moment and breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth. It was the sound of something leaving her. Fear, maybe, or the long echo of being disbelieved. "We'll need your signature to close the record," Olivia said gently. Maggie opened her purse, removed her pen, and signed beside the line marked "Client Verified." Mark gave a satisfied nod and slid the document into its final envelope. Across town, an evidence tech clicked through the last few screenshots recovered from Brittany's desktop. One image in particular stopped her cold. A scanned page titled "Long-Term Control Plan." Bullet points included: switch doctors to someone who won't ask questions, suggest medication review to discredit memory, freeze out Grace, remind Maggie she said she didn't want to be a burden. The officer tagged the file, intent to defraud, confirmed. Cliffhanger, not included in word count. That night, as Maggie sat with Grace on the porch, a new message buzzed on her phone. From unknown number. Subject: "I knew. I'm sorry." She stared at it. "Another twist?" Grace asked. Maggie didn't reply. She opened the message and read. The windows in Rachel Cooper's office let in morning light like a promise. Maggie sat across the polished desk, trust binder open before her, the pages annotated, re-tabbed and freshly notarized. Her pen hovered one final time, then touched down. She didn't rush the signature. She let her name flow, letter by letter, as though reclaiming every syllable. Across from her, Grace smiled. Rachel gave a soft nod. "That's it," the attorney said. "The trust now names Grace Turner as co-trustee, with full rights to act jointly and independently. All prior designations are affirmed." Maggie exhaled. "I want her name there," she said. "Not just because I trust her, because she's earned it." Grace blushed, just a little. "You earned it too, Grandma. You wrote your way out." Rachel closed the binder with a clean click. "There's one more item on your request." Maggie reached into her purse and pulled out a handwritten letter, folded neatly and sealed with a small circle of tape. "I want to create a permanent bequest from the trust, a yearly donation, enough to fund free financial literacy and elder protection workshops at the Maricopa Community Center." Rachel read the short letter, eyebrows lifting. "You're starting a local initiative?" "I'm starting a warning bell," Maggie said, "for anyone who needs one." Across town, Allison, Olivia, and Mark each received an envelope that morning. Inside, a handwritten card. Allison's read, "Foreseeing what wasn't said." Inside, a pressed flower and Maggie's thanks in looping cursive. Mark's read, "For standing in front of what I didn't know how to face." Olivia's said only, "You didn't look away." That changed everything. Later that afternoon, Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from Nora Hale. Text: "Charges filed. 3 counts attempted financial exploitation, 2 counts forgery, 1 count wire fraud, in progress. We'll keep you updated." She stared at it for a moment, then forwarded it to Maggie with a brief caption. "Justice started with you." Maggie read it as she walked past the branch. Not to go inside, just passing by. Allison was near the front teller counter, sorting envelopes. She glanced up and saw her. Through the glass, she raised one hand. Maggie smiled and waved back. Grace was at her side, bag slung across her chest. "You okay?" Maggie nodded. "I'm not scared to pass this building anymore. That's how I know." They walked in silence a while. Back home, the house no longer felt fragile. Grace had replaced the batteries in the hallway camera and fixed the cabinet latch that always came loose. Maggie's favorite chair had a new cushion. A photo of the two of them, Maggie and Grace, mid-laugh, sat where the forged documents used to. On the kitchen table, the trust binder rested in a wide circle of afternoon sun. Maggie took out her phone and snapped a picture. Just the binder. Just the light. A quiet record of what stayed. As Grace boiled water for tea, she glanced back over her shoulder. "Do you think you'll talk about all this again? At the center?" Maggie smiled a little sideways. "Only if they ask. But maybe one day, I'll tell someone how close I came to disappearing in plain sight." Grace set 2 mugs down. "You didn't disappear." "No," Maggie said. "I signed back in." A few minutes later, she slipped her phone into her robe pocket, took her tea, and stepped onto the porch. The air was warm, but not heavy. No sound of Brittany's car. No new listing alerts. No steps behind her she didn't expect. Just the hush of safety. Just her name, where it belonged.